Like, what was the hardest part about creating this business?
The hardest part about creating it has been from scratch was understanding and sticking to the things that were important to us. So we don't have a hammer or any other tools. So we're not doing the actual construction, but it was important to us that we hired a Black-owned construction company. It was important to us that we hired a Black-owned architectural firm. So for us, 63% of the construction budget so far has gone to women and minority-owned businesses. That hasn't always been the most economical way forward for
Hmm.
us or the cheapest, but it's been important to us to make sure that if I've got a seat at the table as a decision maker, then I want to put everybody on. I want to make sure that because we provide quality work, there's no question about it. And so I don't have to just go with a majority business owner. I can really look to say, I'm putting this RFP out to people who look like me and who've had some of the same struggles as me, but are just as qualified as those other businesses, but they may not get a look because they're a little bit smaller. They have to charge a little bit more because they're not getting the same deals because they don't have the same volume. So I think really taking the time to find those businesses because they usually don't have the same marketing budgets and all those things either, has been the hardest part, but it's also been the most rewarding.
Welcome, everybody, back to another exciting show of the About That Water podcast, where we help you build strong financial habits so that you can feel confident talking about your money and enjoying everything you do about your money. But today, we have an awesome guest by Tiffany Holmes, who is a Black construction. Is it okay to say, you're like a construction company co-founder?
I would say development co-founder.
Ooh, okay. Development co-founder. So that's amazing because not too many people are like not too many Black people, I would say, are in this particular space. So, I really wanted to help bring you on to kind of talk about some of those activities. Like first, like how did you even get into this particular space?
It was an accident, but I would say it was a divine accident. I've always been about the business of Black business and finding ways to really work more closely with business owners to develop their business, make sure their financials are in order, pricing, budget, stuff like that. And so this opportunity came during the pandemic. A few of us were sitting around thinking about how we could make the world better. And we were talking about it in two separate groups. Those groups came together, and it was like, why don't we create a space for Black business where we can help remove some of the barriers to entry? And I was like, oh, that sounds great. Had no idea what I was committing to at the time. And here we are 4 years later, a few months away from opening. So that's how that happened.
Now that's cool because sometimes people underestimate the power of like thought and just sitting around with crowd thinking. Because I'm sure if we all sit down, we could find at least 100, maybe 200 things that we could try to improve about society if we just sit down in a room and just throw
Mhm.
things at the wall. So, what was one of the um, epiphanies that you was like, we can really run off with this. Even though as a group, y'all kind of thought about it, it's like, okay, could it really be you all versus like partnering with another company?
So the thing that made it real was we got with someone else who had some seed capital, right?
Hmm.
A lot of times the difference between action and ideation is the money.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
And so we had a launch pad that was helpful. But even prior to that, during the pandemic, again, me and the same group of friends, we were talking about how we could help. And this started, as long story short, two friends were trying to open a laundromat with a cafe,
Hmm.
changing the laundry experience that so many people have to experience. They had A+ credit, great jobs. Everything that you would need, you would think to make them eligible for a loan.
Right.
And the bank told them no because they didn't have laundry experience.
Are you
And it's
serious?
like, I got collateral because they both own their own homes. They had both more than 20 years on their jobs with government pensions.
Mm.
So it's like, these two, are you kidding me? And so during the pandemic, one of the ladies started a Facebook group where each month it would feature a different Black owned business, and individuals were asked to just donate $20 to that business each month. And over a 9-month period, she was able to raise more than $100,000.
Good. Good.
So it was like using that as a springboard. It was like, we really can do anything. We just have to figure out the how.
Yeah.
And so coming off the heels of that, meeting up with someone who was like, I have some money, I want to do something. It's not enough to get us where we want to go, but it's a starting point. It was a no-brainer. We had to try at least.
Yeah. So what was that pitch like when you guys inside that group?
Mm-hmm. It was really truly serendipitous. Me and my friends were having lunch at a restaurant where these people were also meeting, but they had heard about us and we had kind of heard about them. And so then there was someone who was like, oh my gosh, they're here. Y'all are here. You need to meet and talk about this. And so there was just a general chemistry and a desire to want to do good initially that brought us together. And it was like, so let's talk more about this. And then it was like, okay, we come together, we talk about our idea, they talk about their idea, and then it starts to blend and come together. And it was like, so we're going to open this space for Black owned businesses, but we want them to be holistic wellness. So each business should have some component of wellness. And when you look at wellness from a holistic perspective, it's not just mental, it's not just physical, but it's emotional, it's financial, it's social, it's environmental. And so here we are.
Wow. So, because you always hear about people coming together and always talking about somebody else stealing their idea. Were there like NDAs had to be signed or anything like that? Or y'all were just doing it off of vibes?
Mhm. We should have probably
But
signed NDA. So learning, note to self,
okay.
when you do this with your next group, you probably want to do that. But we went off vibes. And I think because, again, I hope this is recreated over and over and over again. I hope somebody calls me to consult with them on how to make it happen over and over again. But this is a pathway forward for social change, but that's not charitable. It's actionable, like it's wealth building. It gives ample opportunity. So I want to see another. There is one like this in Milwaukee. The focus is not on wellness, but there is a hub like this in Milwaukee. I think there's some that are opening further on the south side of Chicago now. But I want this to happen over and over again so that we can change our economic status as a people.
Oh yeah. Even I was just looking at the construction. I was just looking at some numbers, and they was just saying, uh, you know, using the different races, black was actually the lowest paid in construction at $32,000 a year, and that was
Mm-hmm.
just as an employee. So with you guys starting this company, the Ox Evanston
Mm-hmm.
company, can you explain like what was the hardest part about creating this business?
Mm-hmm. The hardest part about creating it has been um, from scratch was understanding and sticking to the things that were important to us. So we don't have a hammer or any other tools. So we're not doing the actual construction, but it was important to us that we hired a Black-owned construction company. It was important to us that we hired a Black-owned architectural firm. So for us, 63% of the construction budget so far has gone to women and minority-owned businesses. That hasn't always been the most economical way forward for
Mm-hmm.
us or the cheapest, but it's been important to us to make sure that if I've got a seat at the table as a decision maker, then I want to put everybody on.
Right.
I want to make sure that because we provide quality work, There's no question about it. And so I don't have to just go with a majority business owner. I can really look to say, I'm putting this RFP out to people who look like me and who've had some of the same struggles as me, but are just as qualified as those other businesses, but they may not get a look because they're a little bit smaller. They have to charge a little bit more because they're not getting the same deals because they don't have the same volume.
Right.
So I think really taking the time to find those businesses, because they usually don't have the same marketing budgets and all those things either, has been the hardest part, but it's also been the most rewarding.
So you mentioned marketing budget because obviously I'm a fan of podcasts because I run a podcast. And I think this is like one of the best forms of marketing, especially because you're able to get behind the scenes of what's going on in the business and actually get to know the owners. So what have your marketing budget look like and what does marketing look like for you guys?
So our marketing budget has been $0
Love it.
And I say that halfway jokingly. Literally, there was not a line item for marketing with this because you just think it's such a great idea that people are going to hear about it by osmosis, or people are going to be chasing us down to write about it and tell our story, which is not what happens. But that's how we started. And when you don't necessarily have, initially it started out as a $6 million project. Thanks to COVID, supply chain issues, and other things, it ballooned to a $10 million project. Wow. And when you're fundraising for that money, you think about the major things like the construction. What do we need to do to get it built? And so marketing was like, we could put up some social media posts ourselves. Well, that's not that easy. Oh. So I say this to all business owners, you definitely need a marketing budget. Some of the numbers that I've heard tossed around are 25 to 30% of your budget for what you want your revenue to be should be spent on marketing. I think, especially for some beginning or smaller entrepreneurs, that is unrealistic.
Yeah.
But I think you need to be creative with your marketing. Interns are a great place to look, but also you have to look at, there are a lot of marketing strategies that are still free and low cost. They may be more time consuming, but you've got to take the time to figure out what those things are. And I do think that podcasts are a underrated marketing resource.
I totally agree. Because we slowly coming out there as far as like people actually understanding what a podcast is. And because it's also on the radio, and even some of the radio hosts are starting their own podcast. So it's kind of gaining some popularity. And hopefully a lot of people can kind of look at it as like pod tours or podcast tours to kind of promote themselves instead of going to face or doing library signings and everything like that, where, hey, you can be at the seat at your home, knock out about 5 or 6 different podcast episodes with other people, and you get your marketing out there. It's pretty cool.
Exactly. No, I think that's good. I think that unfortunately, so many of the more popular podcasts that you may see in your social media feed are not, I don't want to be disparaging to anybody's show, but are more like, let me say, just relationship based. How about that?
Yes.
And not necessarily like, and the advice or the clips that you hear are not always like, oh yeah, I agree with that. Or yes, that's definitely the show I want promoting what I'm trying to do. You don't always get that feeling. So that will have you write off the whole genre of podcasts. But there are shows like yours and so many others that really are about what we're about. And we have to focus more on the good that's in the podcast world than the fluff.
Yeah, a lot of fluff. I mean, but people love that, I guess, because they don't want to, they want to turn off work. And I guess talking about business and talking about how to grow your family financially is considered work because you have to do some homework. Granted, relationships, you can do your homework on relationships too, but
you should.
Yeah, you should. And as we're talking about relationships, you and I kind of grew a relationship based on our mastermind that we're in. And can you talk about how relationships have been helpful in your business?
Oh, 100%. No one knows all the people that they need to know to get ahead. And what I have seen from this project is just having a good idea is not enough. Even how we came together, we had our thoughts, someone else was having similar thoughts, but we needed each other to come together to grow it. But there was someone who knew each of us, who was the connect point to get this started. As we think about foundations who we were super aligned to, but sending a blank email to a general email wasn't getting us through. But
Mhm.
suddenly it was like, oh, you know this company because we're trying to talk to them. And now we've got this direct intro that opened the door. So, and even with furthering your ideas and thoughts, networking, knowing people, building relationship, because it's not just knowing people. Because
Mhm.
I can be like, oh yeah, I met so and so. I
Right.
know them, they know me. But the relationship part is what gets the door open, because there's got to be a level of genuineness, whether it's a likability or a trust that you're reliable. People have to know you well enough to bring your name up.
Yeah. And not just bring your name up, but also talk good behind your back, even when you're not in the room.
A
Because I've
hundred
seen
percent.
a lot of stuff.
Mhm. I'm like, yeah, I know her, but let me tell you what I know about her.
Mhm.
And you want to make sure that what they know about you is good.
Yeah. And, because obviously starting a business is not cheap. We also have to kind of make some money. Now, what are the ways? I know you mentioned earlier that you actually were able to find like a venture capitalist, or and I believe you also do crowdsourcing too, right?
We are. Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I will say that we are raising money through a nonprofit partner for the bulk of our money that we're raising with this project. The other component of that is community equity. So community equity or community members like you, like me, we can invest in this project and own a piece of the real estate, which means that annually once the building is open and rents are being collected, the rents are set so that it's profitable for the building owners, which you or I could be. And we receive a return on our investment based on those rents.
Now that's cool. So how could we, if somebody listening or even myself, can get involved in this project?
Sure. So you can visit our website, which is theauxevanston.com, and aux is AUX. You can learn more about our investment opportunity, both on the website or directly at a website called smallchange.co, so smallchange.co, and look for the Aux Evanston. That is an SEO regulated website so that any financial information you put in there doesn't go to us at all. It is monitored, regulated, and all that stuff by the government. So your funds, your information are totally protected.
Oh, that's perfect. So I'll be checking it out. What's the minimum amount? Because I know some of them do have minimum amounts to get
Mhm.
involved.
Yeah, our minimum investment amount is $1,000. The maximum is $50,000. We wanted to set a price point that most people would be able to invest if they wanted to. And also, it doesn't matter if you put in 1,000 or 50,000, your investment counts as one vote. It's not weighted at all. So you have just as much of a voice with a smaller investment as someone with a larger investment. Everything we do is about equity.
Wow. Okay. So I guess for those of you who are listening, or even for myself, is that if you want to throw in $1,000, let's say for a whole year, just be $20 a week. So if you think about like maybe $3 a day, so just coffee a day, can actually get you some return on your investments. And that's amazing. So how long does it normally take once they involved in it to get a refund or start to see the investment um,
Mm-hmm.
work, I
Mm-hmm.
guess you would say?
Yeah. Based on our projections, after our first year of opening, you should see a return. The returns get a little larger so that by year 5, um, I can't say it's a guarantee, but our projections say it will be about a 6 to 8%
Okay.
return
That's perfect.
annually.
Because that's almost like what they say in the market anyway. It's like, oh yeah, you shooting for that 8%, like the stock market. So you guys are right on target.
And the best part about it is, the building, real estate doesn't necessarily lose value. So you will always own a piece of that real estate,
Mhm. Oh, that's
and then
good.
you earn income off of it.
So what is the, from your perspective, was college an important aspect in this? Did this help you out in your career?
So I will say I did not start out down this path. I started out in HR years ago. When I was doing that, um, going to college did get me in the door. And in order to move into management, having a master's degree did help me do that. Now, though I like to think I still look fresh out of college, that's not the reality.
You do look fresh out of college.
And so I say, listen, STEM professions absolutely need college. Um, some others, I do not feel like a college degree is necessary to do this work that I'm doing today. Because for the degrees that I had, it was not concentrated in this. So I've learned a lot over the last 4 years in doing this project. Um, you can learn on the job easy. I think things that like common sense, passion, willingness to learn um, as you go, adaptability, those are the things that are most important.
Okay. And what if you were to do school all over again, what would you have studied?
So my last and final degree was in psychology, and that has been most beneficial to me over the years, both when I was doing HR and in this, because it talks a lot about human behavior
Mm.
and how people interact. And it has helped me the most with building relationships, understanding how to deal with no. You get a lot of no in this business. And so from our own mental learning how to hear that and understand they're not rejecting you personally, Tiffany. It's the project, and it's not even necessarily the project, but they're bound by this or that. So I would say that the psychology degree I had has been most beneficial.
Wow. What was the worst no that you heard that kind of got you like, you know what? Am I in the right space?
Mhm, mhm. I would say that there are a number of organizations who focus on providing grants for Black business, women-owned business for what do they call like at-risk populations. And we would look at the grant qualifications and we check all the boxes. We meet all the criteria. But we were getting these no's, and the no's were based on geography. Evanston, where I live, where this project is a suburb of Chicago.
Hmm.
Literally, we border Chicago. You cross the street, you're in Chicago. You cross it back, you're in Evanston. A lot of the outcomes for Black and Brown people are the same, if not worse, as they are in the city of Chicago.
Wow.
Um, but because Evanston is home to a major university, Northwestern University, and in other pockets of Evanston, they're very affluent people. So we may all go to school together. Those things, we don't have the same lived experiences. But because of geography, we're automatically being ruled out to the point where I was like, I don't know if this is something we can accomplish, because we would hear, well, if you were in a different zip code, we would love to give you this money. You could have raised this money 2 times over by now. Would you like to do this somewhere else? Because we could definitely fund it there. And it's like, this is home for me.
Right.
My family has been here more than 70 years. People I know are living what I'm trying to change.
Right.
I'd happily do it somewhere else, but I got to do it here first. But to hear no so many times was very discouraging. And it's not that I was ever willing to give up, but it was very much like, I don't know if I could succeed.
Mm. And it's almost like they redlining you guys without telling you that
Literally.
you're redline.
Yes, exactly. And
Wow.
redlining did exist in Evanston. And I'm like, and so now you're doing it again.
Right. With the grants, it's free. It's like you don't have to pay it back. Like,
Exactly.
and they keep
Exactly.
saying that it's trillions of dollars out there that's unclaimed grants. But
This is why.
if you're blocking people, it doesn't make sense.
Exactly. Exactly. This is why the money is available because you have little stipulations like that. And it's like, I can show you data
Mm-hmm.
that says we are just as qualified for this. And if there were people, yes, there are people in Evanston who have the money and could give it to us, but they are not. They are comfortable with the numbers being what they are because otherwise they would have already done something about it.
Right. If they true to their word and their mission,
Exactly.
which it sounds like they weren't. But did they come around to a yes, or did they just you just sucked it up and move on?
We suck it up and we move on. Yeah.
That sucks. You mentioned grant writing because this is an important piece here. You and I we talked offline about grants and stuff like that, and I was even looking at grants for podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
And how has grants? Well, first off, grant writing that process. How's that? Have you had to learn that on your own, or did you have a team? How did that work out?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We have a great consulting team who has had some grant writing experience. Prior to this, I mean, I have written small grants for my own business, but I mean, we're talking like $2,500, $1,500. The grants we've been writing on this project in some instances have been upwards to $1 million. So that was a different level of writing for me. So I've learned a lot on the job. That on the job training is real, y'all.
Man, because I'm definitely thinking like maybe I should just intern and just kind of learn the grant writing process. Like I'll do this for free to learn,
Mhm.
and versus doing a lot of trying to pay and doing it on my own. Now, has you been taking on like a lot of volunteers, or is it to help you out with this project?
No, we have not. It's one of those things where people are always like, I'd love to help, but either we haven't had people who have specific expertise to
Mm,
be able to help, right? And we're not at a place where volunteers were like willing to paint. We can't tap them in yet because the building is still being remodeled.
gotcha.
So I think that as we get closer, we will be able to utilize some of those types of volunteers more. But if there's a volunteer out there who would say, like to make a promo video for us,
Oh,
we
cool.
would love that. Someone to write press releases, grant writers, those types of volunteers would also. We have had some legal volunteers that were very helpful.
Okay. Well, I'll definitely try to reach out to my network to see if they wouldn't mind featuring you on some of the magazine, not magazines, but on some of the top end websites. I'll
Oh,
talk to you offline
absolutely.
about it. Yeah.
Thank you.
And so again, goes back to relations, like who you know. So this really helps out.
Exactly. Mhm. Yeah.
So we come up on the third segment here, which is the futures. And this is pretty much about you. So what are the skills or habits that you feel that will take you to the next level?
Mhm. Mhm. So I think financial literacy is something that will take anyone to the next level, but it's something that I've learned a lot, right? Um, Budgeting, when you have a budget, first of all, making sure that it's realistic. Because, like I said, we started with a $6 million budget. And all things being equal, I imagine that that would have been accurate. You've got to be able to adjust as the environment adjusts and be agile enough to be like, okay, so your budget was $4 million off. uh, who's right, who's wrong, and be able to adjust to that. So being able to understand numbers is essential. Um, Having the bandwidth to do multiple things, right? Because while this is building, this is not paying me yet.
Right.
So I still have to do something to take care of a household. So being able to have bandwidth to do multiple things well at one time is key. And being able to build relationships, right? Especially with people who tell you no,
Right.
because you can hear no and shut down. And sometimes that no comes within 2 minutes of meeting. But to still be like, okay, so I know I can't get grant money out of you, but what else can I give you? And be able to give something in return, right? Listen for what they need or what would be helpful to them and how you can offer that. Did
Like
that
that.
answer your question?
You answered the question more like for other people, but I was worried about you specifically. Like,
Okay, let
it's
me dial
okay.
it back.
But it's good
So
though.
me specifically, what skills do I need
Yeah.
to continue to grow? Yeah. So I look, staying on task.
Okay.
No, but I would like to learn more still about real estate. I think I could still improve. I feel like the future for me is more into public speaking. So I want to build my acumen in that space, learning how to market and promote myself, um, just in general, but as a speaker in particular, are areas that I want to grow in. And
All
I want to
right.
learn how to invest better, more
Invest better. Like far as like in yourself or just in like stock market.
in myself, but in this case, stock market and
Okay.
other things. I'm learning that there are so many other ways to invest and not just stocks. So I want to know what a call is and
Oh.
understand truly the difference between a bear and a bull market and when to do all those things.
Mhm.
So I want to learn that stuff, but then I want to learn what else is out there for me to invest in.
Okay. Yeah, because I do that a little bit of investing education piece in my newsletter. So for those of you who want to join my newsletter, it's aboutthatwallet.com/newsletter. So
There you
yeah.
go.
And we talk about all the fun stuff. All right. Sinji already answered the question of, is there anything left for the people? You ready for the final four questions?
I'm ready.
All righty. Number one, what does wealth mean to you?
Mhm. Wealth means to me richness in life. So there's a monetary component of that, but there's a health factor. Like, are you happy? Is your family okay? Physically, are you in a state of being well? Um, you have to have all of those things in order to truly be wealthy, because having any one of them without the other means you're suffering in some way or struggling in some way. And true wealth is not the complete absence of struggle, but it is, for the most part, things are good. And if something occurs, you have the emotional, mental, and financial means to take care of it.
Got it. Number two, what was your worst money mistake?
I don't even want to admit it. But there are two mistakes that I made. One was loaning money that I couldn't afford to lose. And the second was allowing someone to use my credit.
Been there. Been there.
Bad, bad move. Don't ever, 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 ever do it. The only time I would do it is if you're adding like a kid or something to your credit card because you've got good credit, but they don't have the ability to use it. It's the only way.
That's the lesson learned. Yeah. We can have a whole show on that together. We can talk about that.
Bring me back. Bring me back. Because if I tell my story, people will know.
Okay.
Don't do it.
Number 3. What is your favorite financial or non-financial book?
Mm-hmm. I think so. My favorite book is the Bible, and I would say that it's a life book, and so there are financial lessons in there, as well as life lessons in there. Um, I've heard a lot of people say "rich dad, poor dad." It didn't do it for me, but that's neither here nor there. But I think the Bible is just it has been my book of lessons that has been most influential.
I think people look at that book as a book of lessons anyway. It's a guide.
Yeah,
Anyway,
exactly.
yeah.
It's a guide. It's a guide that has some stories in there that have you like, oh, okay. And I think that's for believers and non-believers.
Right.
The lessons apply.
Mm-hmm. Number 4. What is your favorite dish to make?
My favorite dish to make, I make these oatmeal chocolate chip cookies that my family loves. And I think that's my favorite reason for making them. I can cook, but I can take it or leave it because of the dishes that come along with it. But I get the biggest responses from those cookies. And so I feel like it's an easy way to show them that I care, and I only make it a couple times a year. And the reaction is always the same. So that's probably it.
Nice. All right. The last question of the show, which is, where can people find out more about you?
So they can follow me on social media platforms at TTW Coach. You can find out more about the Aux at the Aux Evanston on all social media platforms, and the website is theauxevanston.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tiffany, for coming by and spending your wisdom with all of us here today on the About That Water podcast. For those of you who are listening, please make sure you go like, subscribe, share, the usual what to do, because we have awesome people, and tune in next week because we always got some new episodes coming through. All right, everybody. Y'all be safe. Be out.
Thank you.